If you were a young single man graduating high school or college between 1964 and 1973, you were faced with the knowledge that Uncle Sam was coming for you. Sooner or later, a draft notice would show up with your name on it, detailing where and when you should report. Most young men had few options when it came to the draft. Boys who were of the working class were more likely to be sent to the front lines. This occurred for several reasons, including that college students were allowed draft deferments. For many young men, the only real choice they had was to enlist rather than wait for the draft. This allowed them the option of choosing a particular branch of service or specific job training. For those who did get deferments, those were college students, married men with dependents, or men who took on jobs that were deemed necessary at home, jobs like teachers or scientists. Most young men had little other options though, and when their number came up, they were gone.
I come home one night, everybody's getting drafted. I come home one night and she had roast beef dinner, and I love roast beef. And she had a long face, and she said, "There's a letter on the counter there for you." It was Uncle Sam, greetings from Uncle Sam.
I was in the degree program for engineering. And we had a laboratory situation, and in there was Don, I can't remember his last name right now, but he was a reserve CB, and he knew that we had low draft numbers at the time. He knew that we were going to be drafted as soon as we graduated from ECC.
If you went to college, you got a deferment. And I did go to school for 1 year. And ended up going part-time to Bonaventure to make up a few grades, and I was drafted out of it.
If you were drafted, usually you went in the Army. So that's why I volunteered and enlisted in the Air Force.
The thing that was given to us was the idea that communism was a problem throughout the world. If we didn't do something to stop it, then we could possibly have to deal with it here on our own land.
We spent every Saturday afternoon watching, double features at the theaters down in Olean, and they were all war movies. So we were pumped all our life for that.
Nobody knew too much about Vietnam, because it was really just ramping up.
Well, you had to register with the Postal Service when you were 18.
Mm-hmm.
How they picked your name, then there was no lottery when I got drafted.
A lottery system that was randomly drawn by birth dates. And so you got 365 days a year and months, 12 months. And they were on a ball, I think, in some place in Washington, D.C., and they randomly just started picking numbers from 1 to 365. Any number that was approaching less than 100, I think, your odds of going to Vietnam were pretty darn good back then.
There were only two options if you were drafted: go to Canada or go to jail.
Canada was the big thing. Go to Canada. I never even considered it.
Yeah, I know. There's still some around here that went to Canada.
The rural kids that I knew, all of the virtues that they held and goodness for the country, all that was kind of gelled at the time.
What would I tell my kids? What did you do in the war, Dad? Well, I went to jail for 4 months. I went to Canada and snuck. No, I never considered that.
I was scared. It just wasn't our nature to run. If the country needed you, then you went and did what you had to do for your country, and that's what I did.
America's involvement in Vietnam and the resulting divide it created among America's youth was the result of these different experiences. The men who served came home to men who did not. The war that dragged on showed itself to be unwinnable, and the political landscape turned against the government as the daily horrors of war were transmitted into American homes on their evening news. There were two worldviews, one where you fought in these horrors and one where you fought against these horrors. Like what often happens, we forget the perspective of the other. The men at home sometimes forgot that those who were in Vietnam didn't have a choice in the matter.